trapped a bunch of aging role-playing gamers in their homes, forcing them to crawl out of their pen and paper comfort zone and into the online world of virtual tabletops and video calls. So join them as they raise the curtain to share their stories, insights, and love of all things geek. So grab your longsword and your +1 bottle of Viagra and get ready for another episode of Advanced Age Role-Playing Gamers Podcast. That's a lot of syllables for one sentence.
Hello and welcome to the Advanced Age Role-Playing Gamers Podcast. I'm your host, Nathan, and I've got with me my co-host.
Hi, I'm Matt. I'm the co-host.
And we've got, we did it right that time, kind of. And we've got Drew Gaska with us from Free League Publishing, the writer, lead designer for the Alien product, the Alien RPG. And we're so happy to have you here. As I mentioned before, for the podcast, we've run Destroy of Worlds. We've also played Hadley's Hope and had a lot of fun with it. And some of the things that you created and I threw at them, they still give me shit about. So,
well, that's awesome. Then my job was done.
Yeah, it's great. So why don't you introduce yourself and talk about what you're doing with Free League and maybe give us a little bit of a dive into some history about how you got there.
Okay. So basically, I decided in the early 2000s that I was going to try and run a studio that was going to do comics and novels and whatnot in sci-fi genres. So I tried to pick up some licenses. And in the end, long story short, I wound up with Planet of the Apes. And that was my first Planet of the Apes novel that came out in 2010 called Conspiracy of Planet of the Apes. It was an illustrated novel, has paintings in it, a lot like Aliens Tribes, if you guys have ever read that book from Dark Horse, but it's for Planet of the Apes. Okay. And a few years after that, the franchise director over at Fox at the time called me and said, hey, we're working on this interconnected Planet of the Apes website, which didn't wind up not surfacing because of the Disney acquisition. But he said, we're working on this and we think you know this stuff better than we do. Do you want to be a franchise consultant for Planet of the Apes? And I was like, oh, of course, absolutely. And that led to me doing stuff for Alien. And then eventually I wrote the 700-page in-house Predator Bible because with the new movie was coming out, they thought they were going to have a big, licensee tie-in thing. And obviously the movie didn't do as well as they'd hoped. But yeah, and that's something I'm hoping that we'll somehow see the light of day for the general consumption. But yeah, I worked very hard on that for several months. And in the process of all this, I was told by the franchise director over there that if there's any property that doesn't have something locked up already with a licensee, that I can find a project for, they'll make sure that I'm recommended as the writer for it. Oh. So I saw there was no Alien role-playing game. So I went around and I shopped it around for almost 2 years. And every company I went to was like, no, it's a one-hit wonder. It's more, it's the Alien every time. So no one wanted to back it. And then I connected with a friend of mine, Joe LaFavi, who is... he makes these type of things happen in between Hollywood and publishers and whatnot. He's an awesome dude. And I went to him and I said, listen, I can't find anybody. Can you find somebody? And within 30 days, he had hooked Free League up with the project, and Free League and Fox asked me to write it. That on Joe's end, he had just really liked what Free League was doing. And he said, give me a list of the top licenses you'd want to do. And Alien was at the top of that list. And the next week I called Joe and I said, can you find someone who wants to do Alien? So it was this, they were looking for Alien and I was looking for someone to take Alien, and it was just a perfect connection. So.
That's pretty crazy how things happen. That's, serendipity, yeah. I guess.
It's definitely not your normal story, none of my career in this business has been the way things normally get. It's like I got that Planet of the Apes license because I was making good money in video games. I was working for Rockstar Games on Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption. And I had gone into a comic shop, and I've told the story a million times, but I'll try to make this part quick. Went to a comic shop, and there was Planet of the Apes comic there. I was like, oh, that's awesome. Who's putting this out? Marvel, DC? And it was somebody called Mr. Comics. And I was like, if Mr. Bleeping Comics can get a license, so can I. And that's when I got hired an entertainment lawyer and did all that stuff. So that's what it was, just signing. Okay, maybe I just need to make this happen for myself, is what I thought, rather than, trying to submit things and hoping somebody would pick me up. That's what I did.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting kind of chain of events there. It's kind of snaking through the process from video games to graphic novel type product to an RPG. Had you written any other RPG products?
No, but I was a GM for 22 years.
Okay.
And I had already retired working on that. I say retired, it had been like 10, 15 years since I wrote any RPG stuff because I just didn't have time with my work. And I was coming on to just write the setting and lore and to punch up some of the rule sections with some tone, like that, better check what's in your trunk and nonsense like that. That's in the regular rule sections. I wrote all those silly lines and threw them in there, so it wouldn't be dry. Because the rules were great, but, when you're reading a rule book, you don't want to be reading an encyclopedia. You got to punch up things. And someone else was supposed to be writing the Adventure Chariot of the Gods. And Hope's Last Day from Dave Semark was the convention game that they were doing. It was not supposed to go in the core book originally. The guy who was writing Chariot of the Gods, which didn't have that name yet, I'm pretty sure I named it. I don't know if they let him go. I don't know if he quit. I don't know what happened. But they called me one day and they said, hey, do you want to take a stab at this? And I was like, sure. I mean, I GM'd for 22 years. I wrote 1 billion adventures for, 3 people around a table. Why not? I'll give it a shot. And in the process, it became big. Chariot became bigger than it was supposed to be, which is my trademark, apparently. The core book was originally supposed to be like 220 pages, and it's 340 or 380, something like that. I can't remember. But it's because I overwrote everything. So they decided to pull Chariot out, put the Con Adventure in, and give Chariot its own release, which eventually came into the starter set. Because originally Chariot was released by itself.
Oh, that's
with a whole bunch of other really cool things like the dice and the maps and everything, and they decided to condense it all into one set.
So was it their idea to do the box set?
Yeah, I didn't even know about the box set. It was what had happened is, from what I understand, and again, forgive me if I got this wrong, but from what I understand, the core book sold out immediately, and retailers had Chariot, and they had the map set and dice sitting around with no core book to sell. So they were like, what the hell are we going to do with this? And nobody wanted to order that crap. So they condensed it all into a box set that had everything and the stripped down rules. And then, boom, crazy sales on that one. So, it's much better. It's a much better deal for the consumer also, because I think all that stuff together, I don't know, it came to like $80 and you get it for 50 instead in the set, as I recall. So, it's really good deal. And the quality of the map paper and everything, and you saw in Destroyer, it's the same way, obviously. They really go all out. They do really quality products at Free League.
Yeah, we've been really impressed. So, I mean, growing up, TSR, all the sort of, the older game companies, I've kind of feel like Free League's really coming into the spotlight of being a major. I mean, if you talk about so first of all, it's interesting that no one was interested in aliens. Like, I get the idea that, it's just the alien, but even still, that's a genre or an event thing that has, everybody knows it, right? Everybody knows it. Everybody wants to be Ripley and the giant, loader going toe to toe, or one of the Marines, right? Or it's a great setting. And Free League they've got aliens now, right? They've got Lord of the Rings, right? They're getting ready to release Blade Runner. So they've have been pretty savvy to support some pretty, I would call, cultural icons, right? For the sci-fi and fantasy genre.
Well, I mean, here's the thing with Alien. Like, it could very easily turn into a one-note thing, especially if you're not going to make use of the cool stuff that's in the prequel. Because that black goo gives me all these opportunities to do weird things with the stories. And minor spoiler alert for Chariot, because I'm not going to give the exact thing away, but Chariot is set up just like the first Alien movie is. You're on a ship, you encounter a lost ship that's been lost for a long time, stress call thing. The particulars are slightly different, right? You get on board that thing, and you're expecting the alien. But I don't give you the alien there. So everybody at the table is suddenly, wait, what? All my expectations are blown. What the hell am I dealing with? And there's a few people that complained, why isn't this the regular alien in this? And this is exactly why, because we needed to capture that I don't know what the hell is going on from the players. And that's why I pushed for it to be not the alien, but a variant. So yeah, it's funny. Some people hate the prequels so much that I'm going to change it to the alien. It's like, okay, you change it to the alien, but then you just unbalanced everything. And I've noticed that a lot of people who change it then I didn't like it. Well, you didn't play it the way it was intended. So, yeah. But in most cases I've gotten, and I really am happy about this, I get fans telling me that they didn't like the prequels until they started playing Chariot and this, and then they suddenly realized there's all these cool ideas in the prequels. They may have just not been realized as much in the film. My favorite fan review I ever got was Alien Chariot of the Gods redeems the Alien prequels.
That's great. That's awesome.
So, there's all this stuff that's there, and I could see why someone would think, because how many times are you going to go up to the egg and look in the egg and right. face hugger, okay, yeah. And the alien should never be something like yawn. It should be, oh my god, it's an alien this time. I'm getting the bleep out of here. Can I curse on this or no?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm getting the fuck out of here. Okay. Yeah. That's what it needs. That's what it needs to be. So you have to have other things in there, so that when you actually get to the alien, it's more special. So it's a balancing act. Is what it comes down to.
Well, I could tell as a player in Nathan's when he ran Destroyer of Worlds, the whole, I'm not giving too many spoilers, but that extra added dimension of having something else other than the alien. Because none of us, right, everyone's seen the movie way too many times probably, right? But having something else that you don't know what it is, you don't know what it's going to do, you don't know, and actually we left that game with some mysteries never really solved. So it's kind of an interesting...
Which I didn't know, which leads to one of the questions I wanted to ask is so was this always going to be a trilogy? Because we could, or maybe even more than that, because we can see the Draconis strain story kind of from Chariot Gods to Destroyer Worlds to A Heart of Darkness, but there's also a bunch of it in the CMOM.
Yeah, in the Conan Marines Operations Bound. Yeah. So when I wrote Chariot, I was like, okay, I'd be stupid if I don't do anything with the rest of the Cronus, because its lifeboat, the ship is here and the lifeboat is missing, So I knew I'm going to do something with that. And I wasn't sure what it was. And I went through all these different things, and I don't know if you've heard, but Destroyer was originally very different. Mm-mm. Destroyer was originally about a virus that was out of control on a colony, and nobody knew who was sick and who wasn't. And I had ideas for story cards that were going to tell you to cough and things like that, and but then COVID hit right after I finished writing this, so I wrote that during the fall, and then in the spring, Thomas calls me and he's like, we need to rethink Destroyer. And I was like, at first I got up on my high horse and I'm like, no, sci-fi should always address the issues of the day and we should tell stories about it. And he said something very humbling to me, which made me realize he was also right. I was right, but he was right too. You don't write a story about a man escaping a burning building the day after 9/11. So let's let this thing go through and calm down before we go write something that makes something like, this is my life right now, And so he's totally right. So we adjusted everything, and I've put elements from what was originally in Destroyer in, the Heart of Darkness and other things. So nothing was wasted. And I think obviously it's stronger the way it's turned out in the end. But I set out from the beginning thinking we're going to set this in a year in the Alien universe. And every year of releases, we're going to advance the timeline 1 year. And there's going to be fallout for the things that are happening. I wanted this to be living, breathing. And then I reached out to Titan in regards to their novels. And I wanted to have some kind of interaction with us and them. And Cold Iron Studios, who did the Alien Fireteam Elite game, they actually reached out to us so that we could sync up the histories and everything. And a lot of stuff I put in the CMOM, which is Colonial Marines Operations Manual, people, in case you don't know the abbreviation. A lot of stuff I put in the CMOM sets up stuff that's actually in Aliens Fireteam Elite. And apparently I found out that they actually accidentally give away the secret of one of our campaign missions in there by saying 20 years ago this thing happened, which is awesome. At the same time, it's not, because that takes place 20 years after our thing. What's great is if you played that adventure, you're sitting there playing Fireteam Elite and you're like, they're talking about me, because it says 20 years ago a Marine team did X, Y, and Z. And we've tried to work it in so that you're now interactive part of the Alien universe. We won't give away enough information when we talk about it in a novel or something, so that it's like it won't fit your campaign. But we will mention it in a way that it absolutely, whatever happened to your campaign has just been mentioned. So that's the trick too. How do you mention it in a generic way? Because, different campaigns go off the rails. So I just wanted this complicated, like, reliving, breathing universe, and it looks like it's working out. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool, tying like sort of a canon between different mediums.
Mm-hmm.
well, that kind of plays to your strengths too, because you've played in all those mediums. So
Yeah. And in the past, companies wouldn't have been interested in doing things like this, because everybody just wants to do their own thing. And that's why you have all this disjointed stuff in a franchise that doesn't feel like it fits together.
like the Marvel, Sony, and
Marvel, as Disney's Marvel movies, have done a great job to keep everything together now. But the old way, absolutely, was completely, nothing had anything to do with each other. And people have seen the value in that. And it's because of those Marvel Disney films that companies are like, oh yeah, let's connect with that now. So it's, and I'm a huge fan of the old Star Wars West End role-playing game.
mm-hmm.
I GM'd that forever. And because of that, when I started to write these Alien books, I wanted them to be source books for the universe just as much as that they were a cool game. Because there's always that person who, I had friends who bought those Star Wars source books just because I'm a Star Wars fan. I'll never role play this thing. But then it stares at you and it's a gateway drug to role playing. So, and those books got handed off to authors as source books for their novels in the Star Wars universe. And that's what's happening now with the role playing games. They're being given to their writers and stuff. And I think that's fantastic. We're all in sync now.
Well, and they're treating the IP like it's they're treating the IP well. They're taking it seriously and not, you've seen some growing up. There were probably like 2 or 3 D&D movies, and they were all awful, and they just, it was just like, okay, we're gonna make a few dollars on the people that are fans of this stuff, and it's gonna be, it doesn't really matter if it's any good. But now, the quality that Free League is putting out in Alien and the other IP that they've got a hold of now is just phenomenal. Just the art, the build quality, the books is super nice. The binding is great. So, yeah, I'm loving this. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about was I'm probably just a tiny bit older than you are, but we've probably been playing games about the same length of time.
How old are you?
I am 51.
You're a year older than me. I turn 50 next month.
So I was never a huge fan of pre-gens for characters until I played Destroyer Worlds with these guys. I guess as part of it, I think, is the way the system works, where you have a buddy and a rival, but the backgrounds worked really well, and my friends did such a great job bringing those characters to life and just diving right in and making them run. Like our friend Sean, there will never be any other Gunny Sergeant Mason, and Tears Dante was just totally off the rails.
See that, and that's
Hammer. I'm sorry, Hammer.
Hammer. He played Hammer.
Yeah,
that's an interesting thing, because I look at the Reddit stuff and I see what people are saying and whatnot. And every now and then there's somebody who has negative comments, and you can expect that. And I read these negative comments and think, okay, whether this guy is right or wrong, why did you get to that? Okay, what can we do to make sure that doesn't come across that way? It's because no matter what, you can always learn. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's people, I think the people that don't get the game are because they're not willing to broaden their horizons of what role playing means and stuff like that. And because I've heard several times that, there's no player agency because you've given us a character and then you give us these agendas. But I've seen people at the table just take those agendas and do such interesting different things with them and betray everybody in a completely unexpected way. And when it all goes down, and I've seen people who don't role play sit down at Alien and be like, okay, now I have a guide to what to do. So I know what this character is supposed to be. And they do their own interpretation of that character. And it's great for that. And if someone wants to use their own characters, absolutely. That's why we have campaign play,
Yeah.
If you could modify things in any cinematic to use your own characters as well, but the GM has to be aware of the balance. It's like, why does this guy have a split personality? There's a reason for that because it's important to the story later on, yada, 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 So it's you got to be careful when you change things to balance it is what it comes down to. Hammer seems to be the one that people really have the most unique experiences with.
Oh, I mean, yeah, there are just so many quotable moments. So there's a part where they come across a kid and something's not quite right with the kid.
Right.
And just his reaction to the whole thing was like every time I listen to it, it's like the funniest thing, and it's awful, and it's those characters. I think there was just enough in them for my players to grab that and just make it their own, and they really just didn't skip a beat. Maybe it took a couple of sessions to kind of really get in the groove, but after that, it was just beautiful. But so that I really liked.
Well, and Nathan, if you don't mind, so as a player, I didn't feel when playing I didn't feel that those pre-gen characters felt railroaded at all, even with the agendas, right? Because I think what you said is right. It gave us like a left and right wall, but it still gave us like how we wanted to get to achieve that, right? So no, I thought it worked really great. So I liked my character. I loved the agenda. I got Dante, who unfortunately, after what I don't know, it was like 5 or 6, 7 sessions in, I realized Dante's supposed to be a woman. I didn't even, I played him as a guy, and I just didn't even realize I was back, and I was reading through. I was like, oh no.
But what difference does that make? That's fine.
Right. So Dante was a guy for me. And so it was like, but I had a lot of fun with that. And I, won't say why. Dante's got a very, I like his, that came down to the wire for his backstory. So sorry, Nathan,
No. I was rambling anyway. So, So let's talk a little bit about Heart of Darkness.
Okay.
So I've been flipping through it, and
do you want to talk about the star of Heart of Darkness?
That's what I was saying. Do you recognize anyone from the book?
There you go, the tuxedo cat.
Yes, he's asleep.
Good kitty. Just reading through that and just seeing now the evolution of where you've taken the whole Draconis strain bit is just kind of blew my mind a bit. And also, so I was reading through it and I was thinking about how writers usually take like a piece of themselves and they kind of put it into the stories they write. And then I got to Cuddles. and then I got concerned and disturbed. And
what part of Cuddles disturbed you?
Oh, just the whole, especially kind of the narrative description,
right?
And that the whole piece is just 51 years old. I feel like I'm fairly jaded and hard to kind of like gross out. I've got Clive Barker books and China Miéville and. Holy shit! I mean, do you need to talk to somebody? Are you okay?
I'm not gonna name names, but several years ago, not that long ago, but a few years ago, I had an editor tell me that they didn't think I had the chops for writing horror. So I was like, oh, really? Let's see about that.
Challenge accepted.
Let's tie them to a chair and make them read that whole bit. Actually, the whole section. That everything kind of leading up to that was just like, it was like, oh, that's bad. Oh no, that's bad. Uterus? What? No. And it's just, whew.
There's one part in one of the events where something really nasty happens, and then I wrote afterwards, okay, I think the writer has a problem. And they left it in the book. I thought they were going to, I put it there for Thomas and Nils, and they left it in. I saw it. I was like, oh my God, that's great.
Yeah, and actually, I love that meta kind of stuff, as Matt would probably attest to. But so speaking of that, so that's really well done. If you like body horror, this is got it.
So the funny thing is that I can't watch I can't watch like Saw or anything like that. It's too disturbing for me. I can't deal with that. So what I'm just trying to do when I write these things is, how do I describe these things in a way that's more evocative of emotion than it is of describing what it is. It's like, how do you describe eyeballs shooting across the room without saying eyeball shot across the room, and I think I pulled that off okay in Chariot when that happens. It's about taking a novelist's approach to it to make you say, oh, I'm really seeing that because he didn't use the words that you would expect to see that, and I have loved H.P. Lovecraft since I was a kid, his work.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that in it. And I've noticed with Lovecraft stuff that you never, every time I see someone's drawn the creatures, I'm like, that's not what it looks like, because they're not really described well enough to draw what it looks like. And everybody sees something different in their head. So, what I envision that thing looks like, someone else has got a completely different view. So, it's all about describing things as visually as possible.
Yeah. And I noticed there weren't really a lot of there weren't like kind of stat block pictures of the new developments, we'll call them. You could read the descriptions of what's the players are going to face, and you definitely do get it. And you don't really, probably, if they try to draw them out, it probably would take something away from that. So I think that's probably a good decision on everybody's part there.
Well, the artists that they've had working on the alien stuff have been, it's all moody, and the art just makes you feel what's going on there. There's no question there. It's if it was drawn like in regular comic book art or something like that, it would never, those books would not feel the way they do, So all that deep shadow really makes you feel something more.
No bright color. It's all very washed, right? Sort of yeah. So speaking of interesting elements, so you mentioned it, but yes, so there is an option if someone should perish, that there's an alternate way to experience the game. And again, I was reading it, I was like, oh, that's an interesting. And then I was reading your profile, I'm like, oh, you sly dog. So was that something that started as a joke, or was this like, had you planned to do this, or like one night you're up late, you're like, walks across the keyboard and you're like, you're in,
Well, he's always that's the farthest away he always is from me. Like, he's usually in my lap or in the seat or whatever. He's not like a normal cat. His name's Adrian, for people who don't know. He's very intelligent, and he makes his intentions very clear, and he's very loyal also. He gets upset when I go away. And I wanted to have statistics for cats and the dogs and other animals in the core book, but they were like, there's no room for that. Stop. You got too much in here already. Just stop. So I stopped. And I started thinking about it, and wouldn't it be great? I thought about Jonesy, and I think, what would you do if you were Jonesy? So is there a way to do this? So I snuck it into the concept and to see if anyone would say anything. And I think it was Nils who caught it first. And someone over there was like, oh, this is a bad idea. It's going to be too comical. And Nils was like, absolutely not. This is great. And then Thomas saw it and he was like, yeah, let's do it. So I was very happy about that. And we got pictures of, they literally just used a picture I have of Adrian as the thing. And then I laid on the floor. So I get a ground eye view. And my girlfriend was on the other side of the room with treats for the cat. And so he'd walk from me towards her. And I snapped off the photo, which is the image of him carrying the thing in the
little doll or something.
Yeah. So we used that to him. We gave that to them and said, yes, this is the point of view you want. So then that picture I think is pretty creepy in the book too, with the cat walking and carrying the thing. So, Adrian is the star. So
I think it was an excellent idea. I think that idea, that perspective, right? If you're a player, because we had at least one death, right? At least I think.
Yeah.
But that just kind of the whole idea of like experiencing that story from, I guess it would be instead of bird's eye view, cat's eye view, might be kind of fun.
Yeah,
and I haven't read them, but the teaser was not every it has an agenda as well.
Yeah.
And it may not always be to the party's best outcome. So,
well, I mean, a cat's going to do what a cat's going to do. It's not that you can't go, Adrian, go get help, and the cat go get help because he just sits there licking himself, looking at you like, what the hell's your problem? So can it get goofy? Yeah, if your players decide to take it that route, or if they're very serious about playing a cat. I made the cat important for the party also because of the location of where Heart of Darkness takes place. Everybody's getting severe stress, whether they want it or not. It's a byproduct of where they are, orbiting a black hole. I believe it says it on the back of the cover, so it doesn't really matter. So the black hole is causing everybody to have negative reaction. So if you sit with the cat's purring takes away a stress level. I was like, how can we work this in to make sense? Because he always takes away my stress when he does that. So, so I found ways to make it work for the rules to help the players because they're going to need that. So.
Yeah. So there's a lot of science in this one too. Just, did you do research for that, or is there other people working for?
Nope, just me. Just me.
You. So that's some pretty interesting stuff. Like I don't want to give away anything, but there's definitely just the play, the setting plays a big effect on the players, but you've got explanations for these phenomena that take place that explain that. So I think that's pretty cool because Alien can be pretty far out sometimes, but it's nice to kind of ground at least some of it in some science that makes it believable.
When I wrote my second Planet of the Apes novel, Death of the Planet of the Apes, Taylor, Chuck Eston's character, I have a flashback in there to what happened to him in the Korean War. And it takes place during a dogfight where something weird happens. And I was like, okay, I have to use terms that they only used when flying planes in the 50s. I can't accidentally use a modern term. I got to make sure that I know what this engine does. Because I can't half-ass it. I can't bullshit it. Because no matter what, at the end of the day, actually, I am bullshitting because I'm not an expert on flying 1953 airplanes. But I'm going to damn well make sure I did everything I can to make this as least bullshit as possible. And the best sci-fi, you use a little bit of science to hide the fact that the weird shit. You make it seem like the weird shit is, because of the science, this makes sense, and then it's not like, what the hell was that crap? Oh, that's taken care of. So yeah, it's something that I'm very, anal retentive about, that I'm very OCD about. I'm like, this has to make sense. It's gonna make sense.
So is that part of that? I noticed one of the projects you're working on has to do with Space 1999.
Yeah, no, I wrote 2 graphic novels for that. 2013 they came out.
I remember watching that as a kid, but that's more like, I guess we'd call it like almost more hard sci-fi.
Yeah, I mean,
somewhat.
In some ways it was. In other ways it was like they just threw science out the window. Like what happens with the moon blasting out of orbit and everything. They didn't really think that through. So when I wrote the graphic novels, I thought it through. I made it make sense. Like the first graphic novel is called Aftershock and Awe. The first half of it is a retelling of the pilot episode of Space 1999. But apparently, when the pilot episode was done, it was 3 hours long. They chopped it all down to what they did to a single episode. It wasn't even a two-parter in the end. And they got rid of all the rest of the footage. But there's audio cassettes of all the extra scenes that they had done because someone on set was just recording the sub. So I went through those audio cassettes because they're on YouTube. And I looked up scripts and I found all the scenes and I was like, okay, season 2 characters are not mentioned in the pilot. They just suddenly appear as if they've been there already. So I'm going to show what they were doing in this. And I did this extended version. And then the second half of that book tells what happens to the families of the people that are on the moon on Earth when the moon blasts out of orbit, because there's a lot of science about how fucked up the Earth would get if the moon suddenly blasted out of orbit. So, yeah, so this is just a trend with me. I have this problem where I was like, I got to make this make sense. Too many people say, well, it doesn't make any sense at all. And I'm like, it's sci-fi. There's always a way to make it sense. So
I was looking through this too and just trying to connect the dots in between the three. I'm calling it a trilogy, but it's not really a trilogy.
It kind of is.
Yeah. So I think I mentioned earlier, but you seem like you took it a direction I wasn't really expecting as the fallout from Destroyer Worlds. And it's, it's very escalated.
Are you talking about the border bombers?
Yeah. Well, that and the radiation stuff.
Okay.
Like that, the whole the science bit, and the repercussions of that, and the other the new threats.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I'm just wondering, like, is that once you're done with Chariots of Gods, was this like always in your mind to kind of do that take it that far, or was this something you did after getting through Destroyer of Worlds?
So you're talking about the new threat?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, because Heart of Darkness introduces a brand new threat to the alien universe, something that people are not expecting, and
I wasn't expecting. Yeah,
if things go according to plan, we'll see a lot of fallout from this in many places. So it actually it came about from me thinking about, okay, so it's very difficult to talk about these things without talking about these things. You know what I'm saying?
It's hard to ask the question. I was trying to figure out.
We definitely don't want to ruin it for anybody. But
no, not at all. It's worth it. Yeah.
My approach to these things is like with a license. I will never be like, oh, I got to do this license. Well, I really want to do this story about basket weaving. So now we're going to basket weave an alien, okay? Because that's all I really care about. Basket weaving is my passion. I will never do that, okay? I don't care what the license is. I really don't like Power Rangers. If it was Power Rangers and I was working on it, they'd have to offer me a lot of money to work on it. But I would still do the same thing that I'm about to say now, is that I read all the shit. I watch all the shit over and over again, and I play the video games, and I do everything about it. And I say, okay, we have this here, and there's this here, okay? But this kind of implies this, even though it was never intended to. So we'll do the story that does this. You know, I'm not looking to change the universe. I'm looking at what should be there that's not, that makes sense from everything around it. And again, without giving it away, there are some things that happen in the prequels that don't get answered that made me think, how can I address this? And I don't even know if you've picked up on this yet, but how can we address this in a way that not only we can talk about possibly what that meant, but in a way also that Ridley Scott will never be like, why did they do this? You know, because Ridley didn't have plans. What are you doing, buddy? What are you doing? What are you doing? Is he in the shot anymore or no?
Some addition. Yeah.
He's there.
You all right? You want some snacks?
Probably.
Like snacks.
Yes.
We all
this cat is my Wookiee. Okay, so when I moved down to Florida, and then when I moved up from Florida to St. Louis, I have a Ford Expedition, and the entire car is packed, and I've got pillows and everything on the seat next to me, and he sat on my shoulder literally the whole time. And whenever I had to stop and go to the bathroom, I just unzip his thing, and he'd just go sit in that until I came back. And it's not your normal cat.
No.
That's why I was very happy to finally make him a star. I'm trying to find water soluble ink or something that when we do signings, I can put his paw print on the book as well.
Oh, that would be very cool.
So
he's going to need to get an agent, you know.
Exactly.
So keep him grounded, right? Don't let it go to his head.
So, what do you call it? Anyway, I'm sorry, that was a tangent. Well, we were talking about the connecting the dots and stuff, right?
Yeah, implied.
Yeah. So it's just it was making me think about things, and this is the biggest thing. Also, it's like you can't contradict. You can't say something. You can't go do something life shattering that might be contradicted in the next movie. Okay, so there are things that we haven't even been told. Don't touch that. But I'm just not touching that, and I'm finding a way to address things around it because I know better. You know?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and this is something else people don't understand. Franchise consultant, right? Okay. A lot of people say, here's the guy who controls the canon. No. I'm a consultant. They say to me, hey, can you make this shit make sense? And I say, well, sure. And I put together a thing and I make recommendations and I think this should mean this and this should mean this. And they get it and they go through it and they can say this is garbage, no. Or they can say, yeah, absolutely. 9 times out of 10, they're like, absolutely, that makes sense. You know, every now and then I've gone in the wrong direction from what they intend and they tell me and I say, oh, okay. And I fix that. I don't control anything. You know, I keep the canon and I try to make sure that everything I'm involved in, even is just like with Cold Iron originally just had a couple of questions and I was like, well, what are you guys doing? They showed me what they had planned. And I was like, ooh, this one thing you got to change because that actually contradicts something that's already out there. Mm-hmm. And I said, but all this other weird new stuff you have, let me lay the seeds for that in the CMOM so it doesn't seem so weird. And it's about working that together. So yeah, I don't control the canon. That's ridiculous. And I just work to make it all make as much sense as possible and yet still not just be the boring status quo. So it is a total juggling act.
So what's the process like when you come up with like a plot line or some hard details that you want to put in, in CMOM or one of these other books to get it kind of blessed by Fox or...
Well, it's not Fox anymore now. It's 20th Century Studios.
All right. Well, thanks for correcting me.
Yeah. They dropped the word Fox. 20th Century Studios, and they belong to Disney. So I have to fill out. It's probably less than 2,000 words. A sheet that says, "Hey, this is the concept. This is what I'm planning to do. Here's the type of characters you'll see, and here's a very vague plot." Because I probably don't have the plot figured out completely yet. Right. So I have to write it in a way that does two things. Leaves room for me to hand in something that goes a little off those rails. That doesn't make them say, this is not at all what we approve, And also write it in a way that if I'm going to do something radical, they won't veto it from day one. so it's like, yeah, if I just say, well, now aliens are pink. And of course, right? They'd be like, no. But if I have them go through a cocoon and a metamorphosis and they arrive and they're pink in the end, when they read that in the final, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense that they're pink now. You got to, that's the most basic way to explain what I'm saying, but you get what I'm saying by saying that, you hit them with the radical thing and they're like, no, you present it in a way that they can understand it. And then they're like, wow, that's really cool. Let's do that. So, we get approvals on that, feedback, whatever, until it's finally approved. Most of the time it's approved right away. Sometimes there's back and forth. Then I go and write, and I write and design the maps, and then Christian at Free League, he makes my maps better, and Thomas and Nils tell me no a lot because it needs to be said. I have a tendency. I have a tendency to really complicate things with the rules. Probably because I played Dungeons and Dragons forever, and that was roll for this, roll for this, roll for this. And Free League, it's like, no, we roll this one time, and there's a modifier, and it's done. So they're always like saying, well, let's rewrite this roll part, and it's never been my forte, and I never pretended it was. But yeah, we go back and forth with that, and then Dave Semark, who wrote Hope's Last Day, and a lot of the core books, Alien Attacks. I've written the Alien Attacks since the core book, but he wrote the one in the core book, the ones in the core book. He play tests it, and we get feedback from them on what worked and what didn't. We make the final tweaks, and then we get it over to Disney, and we usually get a list of questions back that are like, well, why would this be like this? And I say, well, if you look at this Dark Horse comic, and if you look at this novel here, and you look at this unused design from Covenant XYZ, and they say, oh, okay, because it all pre-exists.
Yeah.
Okay. Even the weird things I do are coming out of things that pre-exist. So they're not going to shoot it down if you have precedent for it. And then there's some minor things that they want tweaked, and we tweak them. And then it goes out for beta. People who pre-ordered it get a advanced PDF of it.
Yeah.
And for 2-3 weeks, we get lists on the forum. Hey, you guys misspelled this here. Hey, this card is mentioned, but it's not one of the cards anymore. Little things that because we've been staring at it for 6 months, we don't realize anymore, and that we just went through that phase with Heart of Darkness. So the final tweaks are being made. And once that's done, once it goes to print, the PDFs will be updated for everybody. And that's the process, really. It's not as, I don't think that sounds complicated. It goes well because I've been doing this for so long, because I was a consultant beforehand. So I was the guy on the other side of the table originally. I know how to word things in a way that they're probably going to say, oh, okay. And if you don't know how to do that, it could get shut down. I don't know if that makes sense. It's just
pretty cool. Yeah, it makes sense. It's just, it's an interesting, the whole idea of navigating like all of these, right? The sort of, right, you can't break the canon, right? So you've got all these people have equities in these sort of, I guess, in these settings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot at stake, and it's interesting. It's cool that you can like navigate through there and get something published. Speaking of rules, so how much of the rules in Aliens was already were already set up for you, or did you have any say in them? So I guess the number one thing that, well, I know I liked as a player was the stress mechanic.
Right.
And I know it's different so we've played several different Free League games, and the rules are similar, but not the same.
Right.
And so when playing between there was stress in the Twilight 2000 setting.
Called the stress and panic cycle.
Yeah, the stress and panic cycle. And one of the things that I know I enjoyed as a player was the concept of like, again, going back to D&D, as you play, your character gets better and better and better. I felt for us with the stress mechanic, it's awesome because the best our characters were at moment one. And everything after that. And as we hurtled toward the climax, there's less time to just sit and relax. It's just, are we going to either be killed, or are we all just going to go, so that, I don't know how much of that mechanic you had, you work with, or was that just a set piece from them, or? So
absolutely none of it. Like I wrote the core book stuff blind of any rules. I didn't know what they were doing with the rules. I didn't know anything. I just wrote stuff, and then they put rule stuff in. That's not the way it is now, because now I know it. Now I just write stuff and get chastised, and they fix it. But when I first came on board, I wrote this document of what I felt like, this is what I think we need to have in here, what we need that. And I had, and like I said, so with this, I don't know what Free League, I don't know if I inspired this. I'm going to guess that I didn't. But I had said in the beginning that I think we need to have something for post-traumatic stress disorder. Because it's just like, even in the first Aliens comic books that were set 15 years after Aliens, an older Hicks closed his eyes and saw the aliens every night. He couldn't get over it. And I just thought that's really, these things are so terrible that makes sense. Yeah. So we need something for post-traumatic stress disorder. And so that was some of the things on my list. So I don't know if they were already playing the stress rules, probably. I didn't tell them how to do it or anything. I'm pretty sure they came up with it all on their own. We're just like, oh, good, we're in sync, you know? So yeah, no, nothing to do with the rules. What do you call it? I was just here, like I said originally, I was just here to write the setting. So,
well, it matched however that was decided, it matched very well. Nathan, I just don't know how long we're going to go, and Sean will kill you if you don't ask him about the Rhino.
So the Charger and Destroyer of Worlds, that's one of the things I told you they get early on that they keep giving me shit about. Like, basically, it probably comes up like maybe once every 2 weeks.
okay.
How it just a rhino-sized alien snuck up on them and almost killed all of them, but didn't manage to. It was actually really extraordinarily ineffective just from the die rolls. But the
best way to get away from those things is to go down a normal sized corridor that it can't go down.
Yeah. But yeah, they were. I think the umbrance was like that this thing could hide from them for so long, but I liked it. It worked out really well. It was super funny and terrifying at the same time because one of the characters got basically pinned by it. But yeah, so that's one of the things that they really continue to give me shit about. But I think it was fabulous. That's not really a question, but I do have a question.
Well, I think the question was it designed to be a stealthy creature?
Yeah.
Should a giant creature have unfolded itself from the ceiling? Nobody saw it, right? I think that's what we were giving them a hard time. We're like, really? We didn't see this thing? And it just drops down on us.
What room were you guys in?
The ammo dump. The
ammo dump is a pretty big room, so I could see that. Yeah, if you guys were in the command center, I would call bullshit. But
no, it was the ammo area where it was supposed to be, and I probably didn't describe how high the ceilings were properly or something. But
it folded up, like aliens do. It would pass as a big bulky piece of equipment, especially with the lights out, since the power was not on in that place. So but those things really aren't designed for stealth. No. But if it was hibernating, then absolutely you wouldn't catch it right away. But I'm sure once it starts getting to the ground and moving around, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Oh, we were well aware once it got to the ground.
Like, why are all these dead bodies smashed on the ground? One thing I wanted to ask is so do you hide any Easter eggs or kind of personal references in the stuff that you write? Just kind of stuff that
absolutely
just
not.
For you.
Besides the giant full page picture of a cat.
I'm going to walk out the room now because that's.
So,
besides Adrian,
Zmievsky, which most people pronounce Zimajewski.
Oh,
that's my grandfather.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. My grandfather had this thing with his belt, just like that character does. And my mother's maiden name is Zmievsky, and we would constantly get telemarketers calling, "Can we speak to Miss Zimajewski?" Like no one can ever pronounce it, which is why I worked that all in. There are fans who have said, "Hey, can you kill me?" And I'm like, "Absolutely. How do you want to die?" So I put fans in there. Some of the one, I think one of the Colonial Marine commanders, the commandant or something like that, was named after one of the fans as well. I may have put an in joke about certain actors from a certain film franchise in one of the Destroyer events. I do little jokes like that to see if people notice, and I'm surprised how much gets noticed. I really am. People are like on the ball with this stuff. So, I think most writers do this, whether or not if they're really good at it, then no one ever gets it. And then it's not really funny, is it? You remember some of the things or what?
Yeah. I do that in, when I'm GMing, I basically put, Gollum from Lord of the Rings in Twilight 2000, and nobody picked up on it.
Really? That's
I think Nathan has definitely gone over our heads way too many times with some of the references. I think we don't always get them.
Yeah. But still, it's for me though, and I know they're there, so that's the fun part. Matt, did you have any other questions?
No, I talked a little bit before we started recording, just but no, I think you talked about the maps. I just a real short thing is like I really appreciate. So Ari's like science fiction where the technology is like set in like 1985.
Mm-hmm.
So just the whole feel of like the CRT monitor maps, right? You know, there's something just rewarding with this sort of like, you know what? Just because they made the movie 30 years ago, we're just gonna that's canon now. That's the way computers stay forever. You know.
Well, no, I wrote stuff
but they're
about
beautiful maps.
Because of radiation and all the
Yeah, I wrote stuff about why they use older tech also in the thing to explain that away. Plus, if you look in the core book, all right, well, if you look around the set really carefully in the HD version of the first Alien movie, you'll see that there's like, TDK 90-minute cassettes laying around, like audio cassettes. And so I was like, oh my God, how am I going to explain this? Because I just can't let that go. This is my OCD working. So I looked up magnetic tape and I found out that they come up with a new form of magnetic tape that actually can hold more data than the regular hard drives can and everything like that. And then I was like, okay, so these are disposable hard drives pretty much that people keep their personal information on, and it's not 90 minutes, it's 90 terabytes, and and it's in there, it's in the core book, and it's all based. If you look up the terms I have in there, you'll be like, oh shit, this is all real. I love that aesthetic, and I'm not going to pretend it doesn't exist. And I think the Prometheus stuff makes perfect sense as well, because that was the richest guy in the universe who had that chip, so of course he's going to have the more expensive stuff. And, if their 4K or 20K monitor goes down, he's going to pull another one out of his back pocket and put it up again. So he doesn't care. But, so I love that aesthetic too. I wanted to embrace that aesthetic, and I'm really happy that they put the CRT lines and everything and stuff like that. It has been a lot of, we both see Alien the same way, which has been really a pleasure to work with somebody like that, because a lot of times you're like, oh, how am I going to make this what it needs to be, and trick them into thinking that is what they want it to be. Anybody who's ever had a boss has been in that situation. And that's not what happens with Freelink. So yeah, they know.
Yeah. And it worked out for us as players too, because, just telling the players that, hey, just, this is the best of 1980s technology. There's no Wi-Fi, and just put all these modern conveniences out of your head, and that kind of lends itself to the kind of disconnectedness and the horror and the isolation, without all these kind of instant transmissions everywhere, and you're just dealing with like the, your shoulder radios and things like that. So it's I really like that. I think it plays into that horror aspect a lot. So that's all really, really well received from us.
Awesome.
But and I forgot to say this earlier, but congratulations on the Ennies.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Hopefully we get nominated again this year for the CMOM. I'm
sure you will. No doubt in my mind. And what was my favorite one? Was it the Best Death or something?
Best Way to Die.
Best Way to Die.
That was from Tabletop Gaming Magazine. Yeah, that was an entity. That was Tabletop Gaming Magazine.
Okay, I did see that. But that I saw that as like, okay, yeah, I agree. There are so many wonderful ways to die in that. But Drew, I think we can wrap it up and let you have some your night back. I really appreciate having you with us. It's been a pleasure, especially how much time we spent with your products, really enjoying them. So this has been an honor for us, for me at least. I'm sure probably Matt too.
Oh, I've completely enjoyed the setting.
He hates me. He hates me.
I completely enjoyed the setting, and I've read through. I actually stayed away from reading the scenarios in the Colonial Marine because I'm hoping Nathan will run again. maybe a geek weekend this year. So, but the whole franchise is amazing. You know, it was one of the scariest movies ever watched. And then they followed it up with one of the most badass movies I've ever watched.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then there were some other movies they made that,
some others, yeah.
I actually love the third movie, especially the assembly cut.
Okay.
I don't know if you've
I
seen
was gonna
the
say,
extended
no.
version. Oh, you got to watch that. It's so much better. There are parts in the third movie when you watch the theatrical version, you're like, wait, what just happened? And it's, because they left this big chunk of scene out. That's why,
Okay.
So I really recommend it. I think it's called
Revisit.
I think it's called the special edition now, because the assembly cut was when they found the footage but couldn't find the audio. They just had the shitty original audio. So the audio would be terrible and suddenly subtitles would come up for those scenes. And then when they redid it again for the next Blu-ray version, they called it the special edition, and they brought all the actors back into the studio, 15, 20 years later, 30 years later, however long since Alien 3. And they had them re-record the lines so they could ADR it. So,
Oh my
That's
gosh.
beautiful.
but it's great. It's great.
Okay. Go check it out.
Yeah, Alien Resurrection, I've never been a big fan of, but
Yeah.
and here's the thing too. It's like, it's still canon. It's not my job, nor would I anyway, to pretend it's not canon. That's not how this works. And the reason why we set the game when we did was only because there's so much more interesting things happening at that time than setting it after Resurrection, because that's 200 years from the future. But one of the cool things is, and you've probably seen this since you have the CMOM, the Betty, the ship from Resurrection, they say she's over 200 years old. And so I have the Mantis ship that's in the Colonial Marines operations manual as one of the ships you can use. So that's your indicator that, that's still canon, because it's a cool ass ship. This one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that one.
Awesome.
Yep. Yeah, that's super cool.
I have all this crap around me because I'm obsessed. So, at any rate,
You're professionally obsessed.
yeah.
Okay, so any last words?
No, I'm also the lead writer on the Terminator game. That's from Nightfall Games. It's not from Free League. That's going to be coming out. I think it should be in stores in June at this point. I also was lead writer and creative director of Carbon Gray, which is a RPG it's a World War I diesel punk thing that's using the West End game system from the Star Wars days. It's using those worlds. That's over at Magnetic Press Play, and we're planning on putting out a lot of games with the West End rules. We've updated the rules a bit so that they're more in line with modern gaming. There's some things that, honestly, if you look at things, the West End system is almost like the ancestor of the way these games are done now. That the D6 pull dice and all that stuff. It's like, it's clear, hey, these guys came out of this. But there are some rules in there that were like super clunky that we cleaned up, and we call it the D6MV. Which is magnetic variant press play.
Is that out now, or
the Kickstarter was last year, and I believe they're going to be arriving at the end of this month. You could order from the website if you haven't yet, and then in stores thereafter. But check it out. It's got cool minis and everything. Cool miniatures, not from Cool Minis. Cool miniatures. Got to be careful what you say nowadays. Yeah, and I just, there's a bunch of other projects that are coming up that I can't talk about right now, but I'm working on a ton of things. I have 25 releases to my name by the end of this year, and 10 of them come out this year. So, part of this is COVID related with delays and stuff, but I've been working my ass off, getting those Emmy nominations, awards actually. It just has made it so that, this is my job, freelance, and I don't have to worry about my day job anymore. So it's a good time to be doing this stuff. Yeah.
Living the dream.
Yeah.
Can I ask on the Terminator?
Yeah.
I don't know how much you could talk. Is it can you set it anywhere, or do you have it set like I'm thinking the movies, Sarah Connor back in the current time frame, and then there's the one that took place like with John Carter. Like, is it? Can you talk about like when that's set?
So the game, the core book game that's coming out is set. Basically, it uses the first movie and the graphic novels from Dark Horse as a setting. I can't talk about what's happening next, but that's where we start with this stuff.
Okay.
And even stuff that, let's put it this way, nothing's contradicted. I did one of my voodoo canon things to make sure that each book works without the other book without contradicting the other stuff. So yeah, so
Nice.
it's you're starting off right now with the first movie and the comics, so which means the 1980s, okay, and it means the 2020s because that's the 2029 is when the Kyle Reese was sent back in time. So it's the 2020s, and because the comics took place in the 2030s, you also got that. So,
Yes.
and the more options will be increasing as the line goes on.
Well, I'll be sure to grab the links for those, and when I get time to edit this video, I'll make sure they're in the details.
I just realized what we didn't mention. If you want to,
Sure.
the Titan novels, Adventures in the Titan novels.
Yeah, we didn't. Yeah, we
You wanted to talk about that.
We kind of mentioned it, but we didn't really talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you said you started talking with them and like made sure they were kind of in line with what you're working on. But how do those scenarios that are coming out in those 3 books, how do they relate to the rest of the work that you've done for Alien?
They're related to events that happen in the CMOM.
Okay.
Okay. In fact, there might be some resolution to stuff from the CMOM that's left open ended there. So they spin out of that concept, and I have written in the back of each of the novels an adventure which spins out of the actual events of the novels. So,
okay,
Interesting.
the first one, basically, the end scene of the novel is the opening scene for your players at the table. So it's like ships that pass the night is the best way to describe it. Okay. And then the second one, there's an event that happens in the middle of the novel when they're like, we got to put our other people on that. And you're the other people when you play it. So it's like I'm part of this now. It's that whole thing that I want, that interactive thing.
Yeah.
So you get to be involved in the events of these things. I've been juggling back and forth on how it should go, and I think we designed them so that they work either way. But probably for your best bang, I would say GMs read the novel first, run the game, and then let your players read the novel. You see what I'm saying?
Book.
Yeah.
When are those coming out?
The first one comes out this month, I think, and then the second one in June or July, and the third one is next year.
Okay.
That's a really cool concept. I mean, it's like a really advanced version of the choose your own novel, but you're not really choosing from the
Choose your own
written part.
adventure, yeah.
But there is, I don't, again, not knowing and not seeing these, again, this is an amazing idea. Like, let's say the one in the middle, something like you play through the middle and then either X or Y happens and then you pick up the book. Like, I don't know, the idea of like, oh, what if there's like 2 different endings.
Right.
I don't know how you do something like that, right? Like, you choose X or Y. So you pick up at page 400 or you pick up at page 600 or something like that. But either way, the idea of like integrating like a game within the novel, that's a really cool idea.
Yeah, thanks. It's something that I was pushing for us to try. So that idea you have would not work in these cases because I'm not the writer of the novels. I'm just the writer of the adventures.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But with Carbon Gray, we have a book called Badge of Blood, and it is a solo adventure that is designed like a not designed like a choose your own adventure. It's similar to the solo adventures from West End Games that they did for Star Wars back in the 90s. So I don't know if they did one with Han and they did one with Luke. I don't know if you guys are aware of these.
No.
But basically the setup is every page has paragraphs with numbers, okay? And so it's not just turn to the page 22, it's go to number 42. You know what I mean? So it depends on, roll the dice. If you roll this, go to this. If you roll that, go to that. It's something that I've kind of passionate about, this idea of being able to play, for lack of a better word, with yourself. Because it seems like a lot of that was going on during the pandemic. People were interested in, well, can you do solo play? Well, absolutely. And we're going to do it in an interesting way. And my writing partner on that, E.L. Thomas, he came up with this great incursion count system, because in Badge of Blood, you're infiltrating something. And every now and then, if something happens, it's like add 1 to your incursion count. So if you get to a certain point, then it's like, you got to go to this number instead now. And the shit has hit the fan, So it works really well. And this all spiraled out of the fact that Eric and I, we co-wrote the first 2 graphic novel adaptations of Choose Your Own Adventure novel. The first one came out last year. It's 8th Grade Witch. And the second one comes out this August, which is Journey Under the Sea. And we just had a lot of fun doing that. And we're like, okay, so how do we take this concept and apply it to actual gaming instead? That's where we started this stuff. So it's not at all what's going on with the stuff in the Alien novels. It's very different, but it's all, let's make these different types of media and blend them together,
It's kind of funny. I have to mention it. So Free League does a lot of solo play rules in their books. And,
I don't know anything about that, but yes, I'm sure.
Well, we do.
Okay.
Especially Matt, because Matt made a series of videos called Playing With Myself.
I was laughing when you said that. That's my series. What's funny is I'm going to look up these Carbon Gray, right? So I've got a few more I'm doing for Twilight, but my intention is to do this for other game systems. But it really did. What it touched into is there's an entire market for solo play.
Yeah.
I found some good websites. There's some blog sites that all talk about structuring for solo play. So I think it is definitely, it is not a saturated market, right? There are people who can't, even with electronic gaming, it is still hard to schedule, to have a group of people to get together at the same time and play. And so as a kid, I used to read Choose Your Own Adventure books, loved them. I mean, so it is.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Find Your Fate, Choose Your Own Adventure, all those. The Indiana Jones ones. There were G.I. Joe ones too, I think.
Oh, wow.
It's just a really cool thing. And I have plans for something which I can't discuss now, which is more advanced even than that for this stuff, because it's something that I'm passionate about. What do you call it? I'll get you guys copies of Carbon Gray stuff if you want to review it and look at it. Yeah.
That'd be good. Terrific, and love to have you on again when you can talk
some
about
of these
stuff.
projects come out, right?
Yeah, I'd love to be back. Well, let's do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Drew. This has been fabulous. I know I'm a lot smarter now.
Usually people feel dumber after they're in the room with me. So,
we've longtime gamers, but neither of us are in the industry, so we find a lot of the stuff about how did you publish, how did you meet the person, like that's very fascinating for us, because it's the whole world behind the gaming system and the publishing that we just grew up playing the games. And so I know it's always great to find out how's the sausage made, right?
Yeah I tried for a long time. I always feel like my career is 10 years behind what it's supposed to be, okay, because I tried by a long time for doing the things the way they say you're supposed to do. And I was getting nowhere because I was just lost in the crowd. And I was like, all right, fine. I got to do something different. That outside of the box thinking is what got me where I am. And, that first Planet of the Apes book cost me $40,000 to put together. And because of stuff that went down with the publisher, I never saw a dime. But I don't feel like I lost any money because that book launched my career. If it wasn't for that, then Fox wouldn't have called me. For this happened. Would have been that happened. So, that's like a cheap college investment,
yeah. Very cheap these days.
Yeah. So, it's, I always say that because I went to school of visual arts. I got a degree in fine art. And I, with an emphasis on comic books, that's where I was intending to go. But I always feel like that there were much more talented people than me there at school, but none of them were stupid enough to keep trying every time they fell down, they all went into other fields. And I was just a guy who kept getting up and was too stupid to walk away, and eventually it worked because of that. So you gotta commit to trying to do these things differently, and just, don't give up on your dreams. I mean, I don't want to sound like a t-shirt or anything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's awesome, though. I mean, that's right. Nothing venture, nothing gained, right? I mean, you have to take that risk. That's awesome. So really enjoyed it. Really
Awesome.
enjoyed talking to you. Thanks.
Thank you.
And so we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this informative session. We'll see you again some other time.